for our Board of Equalization today. And we have items 1 through 3. Are there any things that we need to discuss on agenda items 1, 2, and 3?
Not for me. I'm good.
I have none. So all in favor approving, is there a motion to pass 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, I'll move to pass items 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, yeah, all in favor. Okay, we have a continuation, number 4, approve or deny an application review by the Board of Equalization of Farmland Assessment Act staff for serial number 19033 0006 and 19035 and 03013. Any comments on this from legal counsel before we get any discussion on this?
I imagine Ms. Garcia probably willing to walk you through.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
Do you have all that, Bert, to pull up for me?
I do have the
Photos,
documents, assessors that we're talking about.
assessor documents, whatever.
I'm going to share my.
So basically, these two parcels were taken off Greenbelt due to not meeting the agriculture production requirements. And there's photos in your packet.
Yeah, we have all the way back to 2017, 2.81 rollback acres. Are those part of the 7.53s?
Okay, so there's the document stating that there was not proof of the agriculture production. I did speak with the owner, Mr. Welch, during this process of rolling back, actually before the rollback was even done. And based on the information that he provided me, that was what determined that it did not meet the agriculture production requirements. Do you have a photo next, Ariel, Bert? Okay, so that's basically what we would call maybe the front parcel, the smaller parcel, where the home is. The owner is saying that that green area around the home is an alfalfa field. He did say that they did not have any livestock on the property, but that sometimes they would cut that and take that to relatives who had animals elsewhere. The back portion, which might be a next photo, I don't know. So that's just a different angle. This is out Genola area, if that helps anybody orient themselves. So that parcel is basically what we would call the back parcel. So those kind of lines that you see on the corner right-hand side, those are remnants of what used to be hoop houses or greenhouses where vegetables were grown, but you can tell that it's been a while since that has occurred. And so anyway, basically that's why the parcel was taken off Greenbelt, was not meeting the agriculture production requirements. Any questions for me?
So I got a couple questions. I looked at the application, and then I looked at the, at one point it says that it's denied because of lack of acreage.
Yeah,
They're
that would be-
claiming 7.3 acres.
But that would be
it's
because
for-
there's two parcels. So if that back parcel, which you can see that used to have the greenhouses or hoop houses on.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't meet agricultural production requirements, then the other one doesn't have enough acreage, even if it had an alfalfa field producing on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
But
that's
In
why.
the past, though, and in reading through all the little notes that are on there, they were at one point combined together, right, to meet that production rate that you're talking about?
Combined as a legal description or combined that they
Well,
used to meet the agriculture production requirements?
I'll find it because it does say,
And they may not have met it for a while. I know they had some name changes and there were applications sent out that were not responded to.
right, that's gone on, it seems like that's gone.
So I don't know how long ago There was, but if you go back, because I go back on the aerial photos quite a few years, and if you go back quite a few years back, there are greenhouses on there at one time.
Right.
And there's actually, I think, even livestock visible in some of the photos, but that's like, 8 or more years ago.
There's no claim for grazing or anything on that back property.
Nope, not currently.
Yeah,
I would also like the board to know that Mr. Welch is online and has raised his hand to present when you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
good,
that-
thank you.
Questions for me then?
You have any other points you want to bring up before I ask Mr. Welch to speak to this?
No, I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Mr. Welch, would you like to speak to this, please?
Mr. Welch, you'll need to unmute your microphone. You're still muted.
Okay, how about this?
Got it.
Okay, so yeah, look, I'm not challenging anything. I think you should hear the story because of how it's transpired. So I just thank you for your time. I just want a few minutes to explain what happened. So going back to the greenhouses, most of my life, it's been alfalfa, corn, whatever. And we did farm both parcels together. But at some point in time, then the guy proposed that he wanted to do these heirloom tomatoes and greenhouse. Well, he didn't tell me greenhouse. He said he was going to grow tomatoes on our acreage there, which we thought was a good idea. So he takes over the land, and unbeknownst to us, he then proceeds to drill 3-foot-long anchors down into the ground. They have like a cone on the bottom and all over that field. And basically he used those anchors to to put visqueen structures up. Now, he did not tell me this. He just did it. One day I show up there. All these things are all over our land, which we were very unhappy about. But let's proceed further. Eventually, he has a bunch. It was a good operation. The wind blows the stuff down, and in the middle of the night, he leaves. He just basically picks up and leaves me with everything in that back field. So these 3-foot anchors cannot be pulled out with a tractor or anything. So the only way to get them out is to dig them out. And so financially, we have fallen in hard times. So when we have an extra $500 for the backhoe, which costs that for a day, we will then dig down and there's like 100 of these, there was about 100 of these anchors into the ground. So we're trying to reclaim our land here, but no plow can go in there. Nothing can go in there because it hits these anchors and it just rips them to pieces. So this has been basically an effort by us. As we take the anchors out, we then start growing more on that part that we did. But, it's financially, if I had enough money, I could clear the land and turn it back into a field. I'm trying to do that. It's just financially, we don't have the resources to get all those anchors out. So with that is why it's there. You'll see that there's gardens growing. We're actually have leased out part of it to a neighbor who's growing vegetables and that on there. And as we reclaim more, we grow more stuff there. But it's not an attempt to not honor the agriculture, the greenbelt that we were given. I feel like it's just, I guess poor choices by us for letting the guy get on there and do that stuff to our land. So that's all I have. So thank you.
Have you tried to make your property whole with a previous owner when they put those anchors in there that was preventing you from developing that land?
He took off in the middle of the night, went to Tremont, and he was, that was his big thing. Don't worry, I'll clean it up. Yeah, right. He got in financial problems, just people looking for him. He just disappeared. So he's gone. I mean, he owed a lot of people money by the end there. I'd have people showing up trying to collect stuff,
When did this land transfer hands again?
No, it's been ours since,
No, they rented
I don't
it
know.
to a guy.
He's just writing it.
He was
we
renting it
just
to-
leased it. We've always leased it to you. We're Klingers, Johnsons, all those. We've just leased it to, they've always farmed it, forever. And so it's always been that. And we just happened one time to lease it to the wrong guy.
What year did you lease it to him?
I don't even know. You can see the greenhouses. He was there, after that on those area photos. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that we're not trying to get away with anything here. We were trying to. I would love nothing more than to have that land back and plow it and do everything else, because we have a lot of people that would love to plow it there. We have irrigation, we have everything. So that was not, this has not been like this thing where we just stopped doing it and then all of a sudden, we're not at Greenbelt anymore. We desire to get back there, but it's very expensive, Plus, once you dig the holes, you got 3-foot holes all over the field that you have to spend time filling in, because heavy equipment can't go in there. So there's like multiple problems with that field.
Have we had anything similar to this in the past?
Oh, I'm sure. Sure. I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Mr. and I can't remember his name.
Welsh.
Welsh. We want you to be back on Greenbelt, but I think unfortunately with the circumstances that we have and the years that are with there, I can't support this just because you need to show that there's farming operations that are going on there. And so I'm going to make a motion that we deny this application with the hopes that as you get these things pulled out and you're getting back into it, that you'll come back and show proof of production on this land.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Can I get help with the $27,000? How am I ever supposed to pay $27,000?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. It's one of those things where you put a lien on your property, so that you could do this. And so it is one of those unfortunate things that happen. But this, the Farmland Assessment Act is pretty particular on that we're doing it for farming operations. And so if we've had years like that where we haven't seen any farming operations, it kind of goes contrary to what it was set up to do. And so it's hard for us to move past that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the only course we have. We're kind of painted in this thing.
All right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes 3-0 is denied. Next item is number 5, approve, deny application for review of Farmland Assessment Act status for serial number 41276 is 0003, account number 583-2022.
And Bert, can you pull those up for me? Thank you.
Talking new documents assessor or additional documents for both?
Assessor, yeah. So this was basically originally taken off due to lack of the acreage requirement. Measuring where the home is, the farmhouse and the residential use area, it came out to 3/4 of an acre, which then made it so that there was not 5 acres in agricultural production. When the owner replied, made the appeal, There was also additional information provided showing that there also had not been agricultural production met for the previous 2 years. So that was in addition. The last time that this parcel had requested documentation for proof of production was a previous owner, and that proof of production was livestock. There used to be livestock in that area. It is my understanding the current owner is trying to grow crops and is having a difficult time doing that. So, so the previous proof of production was livestock, and that's why it had been on, but looking at it closer, it also does not have the 5 acres in production.
I was curious on the boundary of the blue line. Did that line once upon a time go up to the top end of that green up there and then to the far right where it says South 450 West Street?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm just
But
curious.
it's been that parcel because that's like a lot number. So
Yes.
it's not like a different, it's part of a subdivision.
It hasn't changed over the years to
where is
reflect
it?
that change on the real line there.
Mapleton? Mapleton.
Okay.
So has
my,
that-
my guess would be that the line actually does go up that far, but there's gonna be an easement, probably for like a sewer or
Road.
like a pipeline. So like on my farm, it went up that far, but I had to put my fence back
Yeah.
because of an easement.
What I was going to ask is when this first was established, was the line, did they include that green line up across the top and on the side? And did the property, personal property area that we zoned or looked at and mapped out, was that part of agricultural production area at the time that this was first created? Do you know that?
All I know is since it became a parcel, it is that blue line only.
Okay.
So anything on either side of it is not included in the legal description of when it became a parcel, which was quite a few years ago.
So when it was in greenbelt status, how many years ago was that? That was,
It's been on for quite a few years.
so is it
and-
like 3
and-
years ago? Was it considered in production?
I don't remember the exact.
Or
It was, let's see, it was last certified in 2018 with the livestock.
so in 2018, what has changed?
Well, the production has changed
Okay,
for
production,
one.
but the
And
acreage is still the
fencing has
same?
been taken down and changed. Basically the residence was the same, yeah, and it should have been taken off before. And when I measured it leaving that back curvy road. I left that road in what would be like the agricultural area, just because they would need to use it for access to their agricultural area. So I did include that. I did not include that in the residential use, if that makes better sense than
And with
the
livestock,
other
it's
way.
easier to justify. I mean, when I had livestock, I would put my mama sheep and their lambs in a crate in my yard. So, I would argue if it were me and I had livestock, I would argue that part of the yard was still my agricultural production, because every time I had a ewe that was lambing, I had her in my yard. But this is not, there's no livestock here, so that argument can't be made.
Plus it's
Are there other
landscaping.
photos, Bert? Were there other photos, other angles? Or I think I did other years on it, just to give you an idea. Yeah, so there shows the calculation I did. So I left that road basically out of the residential area, just to give them that benefit. And then go see do I have another one? Do I have an older one?
And so the total is 5 1/4,
Yes, it's 5.26.
5.26 minus the 0.75
Yeah.
is what the calculation turns out to be.
Yeah, and about the agriculture production part, this parcel, based on the information that I have, is definitely more conducive to pasture and livestock than it is trying to grow crops. I know on his appeal, he said in the future he wants to grow sweet corn, which would definitely be a harder thing to do if you have problems with water. But that's, just a note that it is not super high quality land as far as soil type and accessibility of irrigation water and all of
Well,
that.
yeah, and it says he's got 1.6 shares of strawberry, and even on 4 acres, 1.6
Right.
shares is not going to get you a good alfalfa crop, and it's not going to get you
Right.
a sweet corn crop by any means.
Right, and he did say that not only with the lack of water shares, but the ability to actually get the water on the whole field, the way it's sloped and where the canal is and stuff like that, the irrigation ditch. All those factors do affect farming, but that doesn't prohibit him from farming.
Having livestock.
And, yeah, so he could still meet the requirements, it's just currently not meeting them for the past 2 years, and then the acreage.
So the big deal is the acreage.
That was what first got me looking at it, and then the further information about the change in use.
Because we do have some leniency when it comes to a year off, you're tilling or you're reseeding or.
Right, right. And he showed that the last 2 years he has not had production.
Right.
In his appeal
The 1
papers.
year was a till and plant. Next year was, of course, drought and right, lack of water.
Any thoughts, additional thoughts?
He's here.
Oh, please, yes. Mr. Dew, come on up, please. Introduce yourself.
I am Brad Dew, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to review this and talk about it. Ultimately, my goal is to preserve the agricultural intent that was originally established when this was built in '94. My understanding is that this has been approved three times for Greenbelt. The original building and development of this, and then again in 2008 it was approved, and then as mentioned in 2018 it was approved again. My understanding, I don't know about the first two, but on the third is that a change of name from the original owner to a trust, and then it was just a reapplication. There's several parts of this process of my purchasing this property that probably in hindsight I didn't manage as well as I could or should have had I known even what I know today. My primary request of consideration is that, as mentioned, I'm not aware of the fact of the law changing. I'm not aware of any change in the property with three.
So you said a law change? What was that law that changed?
No, I'm saying I'm not aware of any change in the
law.
in the
In the
Farm
law. Okay.
Act
Okay.
or the rules for the approval of Greenbelt. So if the law didn't change, if the property didn't change, if the property's been approved 3 times, there's kind of a precedent there. So I look at this property to purchase. I'm elated that there's acreage and that there's an established Greenbelt status. I'm elated that it's already planted to alfalfa. I'm not super excited that it's dryland alfalfa. And I have to say a little bit of an ouch when she says it's not very nice property. Time will tell the production availability, and it is highly unfortunate that the strawberry ditch is a few hundred feet, and it's not only a few hundred feet away, but it's below the property. I can't make any promises as far as getting water there, and certainly a measly 1.6 shares of water are not going to water 5 acres of ground, but any amount of water is helpful. And I am aware that if I can resolve the water issue, that I can purchase more shares. So putting water aside, I have a parcel of land that has a precedent with multiple approvals of Greenbelt status, like the prior gentleman expressed when I receive a letter saying This is withdrawn and I owe almost $30,000. That's alarming, and my intent is identical to the intent of the original owner, and that is to continue the agricultural use of that property. My hope in a dryland state, while I continue to work on the other issues of water, my hope is that to be able to get a spring cutting of the alfalfa and then to graze in the fall. My hope is to put a calf or two on there, in the summer and fall to be able to take care of what probably in the absence of water would prohibit multiple cuttings, but to certainly have a spring cutting. It's difficult for me as a new owner to, with any authenticity, to provide production of the prior owner, but I can tell you that we moved in May of last year. The second that alfalfa started to bloom, I found a local farmer that came and swathed it. And once it was swathed, there wasn't enough that I thought there was even going to be a single bale of hay on that particular, crop of what had been swathed. In the meantime, I've done multiple things to try to take care of the actual husbandry of the ground and the production to try to improve, and anxious to be able to try to do some weed control and to try to get as much production in the alfalfa as possible with the intent of that. When I put in my application that I also want to grow sweet corn, I'm a Kansas farm boy that's lived in Utah now for almost 30 years. And so I'm pretty excited to be able to get everything I can out of this ground and to continue that for basically the balance of my life.
So you moved in May of 2021?
Just this last year, yes.
Okay, so in 2011, I was in the same boat you were. I purchased a farm on West Mountain on 5.3 acres. I had 11 and a half water shares, so I was in a little bit of a better situation. And I received a letter just like you saying that I owed back taxes and that Greenbelt had been revoked. And I'm going to tell you what the county did for me at the time, because obviously I was not a county commissioner then. What I did is I said, I can't prove production for land that I didn't own.
Right.
And under Greenbelt, you have to prove, we can ask every 2 years.
Right.
So I asked, give me 2 years to prove production, which I came before the commission same way. And I was given the ability to give 2 years to prove production. Now, I had a little bit of a different situation in that I had 5.3 acres and my house sat on about a quarter acre. So I had more than 5 acres. With yours, as we look at it, it's kind of difficult. But I'm not one to say that just because you have the bluegrass. Yeah.
Don't insult them.
The bluegrass that that it's not agricultural, right?
No insults taken.
Right. What do and it depends. Well, I was saying in Kansas, you don't have to irrigate your land, right? Not as much nearly. So I know when I lived in Illinois, I was like, what do farmers do all day? They don't have to water their crops? Then I found out that they all worked at Caterpillar during the day as engineers, and then they farmed at night because they didn't have to water all day long. But you are going to have to show that you've got 5 acres that is being farmed. And with as big as your yard is, are you keeping farm equipment in your garage? Because if you're keeping any farm equipment or supplies in your garage, then your garage is technically part of your farming operation. But do you see what we're saying? When you've got 5.26 acres, and you've got 3/4 of your acre in your house, that becomes a problem. Now, I don't think we can ask you to prove production for when you didn't own it. And I think that you have an intent to have production, but pulling an alfalfa crop with 1.6 shares is going to be really difficult. You don't quite have 5 acres. I've got, like I said, I got a lot of empathy because I was standing right there. And so I'm inclined to say, let's give you 2 years you've got 1 year, so give you, a year or two to prove production, but you're also going to have to show that 5 acres of that is being is being produced. The other option we have here is in October, we passed the Urban Farm Act that says that between 1 and 5 acres, you can also qualify for an urban green belt. Now, having to prove production for that is more difficult because you have to prove that production every year. But if you have full intent on farming this land, then it shouldn't be difficult. You're just gonna have to keep tighter controls on it. And one of the things that I did is I just got like a leather bound notebook, and I literally kept track of I had a 1/4 acre garden, I had 20 chickens, and I kept, every time I picked produce so I, one of 5 kids and my mom, and I fed my entire family out of my garden, right? I did a back to Eden wood chip garden, and every time I got a wheelbarrow of food, I wrote it in that book so that if it came and I had to prove production, I was able to say, I got 25 wheelbarrows of of vegetables out of my garden. I also had a small orchard, and I kept track. I dehydrated 500 pounds of apples this year. And because it doesn't say you have to sell it commercially, so it's going to be hard to get commercial receipts, but you've got to show that production. And I literally just wrote it in a notebook for years.
Right.
Every time I had a U-pick and someone came on my property, I figured how many gallons of cherries they took, right? I also got a sheep herd and threw that in my front pasture, and that helped a lot too. Not a big herd. I started with 3 sheep. Out there. But you do have to show production. You got to show that you're using 5 acres for traditional greenbelt. But if that doesn't work, you can show production for the urban greenbelt that we just passed. All of those can avoid a rollback. And so we just kind of need to see what solution is going to work for you. I'm inclined to give you a year to prove production, but we do have the issue of the 5 acres if we can't show that you're using 5 acres, but there is the urban. I think we've got options for you.
So
that's what I'm saying.
That's wonderful, and thank you. And I didn't list anything as far as I did have brief conversation with Bert in the gathering information for the appeal. There are fruit trees. They're in the grass area. So I haven't had any. I haven't even.
That's a good sign.
Considered that as part of what you just described. All of my tools are in the garage because right at the moment it's what I would call a glorified hay shed, and I'm trying to make the building a little more useful to where that I can actually work on equipment. I already had a tractor. I've since purchased a swather, and I've even considered using. You'll look at me like, oh, this guy's totally lost. He's off his rocker. I've even considered using culinary water for part of the area to be able to grow.
Are you on a well or are you on city?
Now,
I was on a well, so I did use my culinary water to water my 1/4 acre garden, but I was on a well.
At the top of this hill, there's no PI. The culinary water hasn't a little more than doubled in Mapleton because there's no PI available. I'm even willing to experiment on how much water can I just pump to be able to water some of the ground. I know right at the moment I don't have enough water for 5 acres, but I'm trying to leverage everything I can to preserve the intent. And so I'm going to do everything I can for crop production, and I'm going to do what I can also for probably cattle and beef, and then try to preserve those fruit trees and everything else for the property and the intent of the property.
So Mr. Dew, with us being in the Board of Equalization that we have here, we're in a certain box that we have to work within, and as I look at this, it's and I appreciate and I really do feel the same way that my counterpart here does in the way of trying to find an opportunity. But in this meeting, we have a box that we have to fit in, and so because you don't have the 5 acres, and you don't have
if you've got fruit trees and you're getting fruit off those fruit trees on the grassy area, I would argue that some of that could be
Well, according
we didn't
according to
count
our
that.
standards that we have to apply here, anything that's on a landscape basis and so forth in the past has always been carved out. So let me work through this. I'll work through the kind of the conversation because I think there's an opportunity here, but you're going to have to make some decisions. If this is denied, then we hold the integrity of what's going on in this Board of Equalization meeting, and then you'd have to come before the county commission underneath the 1347 rule, in which we would carve out similar to what you're talking about.
Right.
So if you wanted to go, to the 5 acres, which I think that you're going to have to probably give up some yard. And make it very designated in the way of what that looks like so that you have the 5 acres and then you prove that production for the next 2 years. It would be a rolling forward. Or if you want to look at the urban farming side, now we've never done this before as far as I know, so it'd be a little bit of out of the box for us. But if you want to do the urban farming and keep your yard in place, I think the commission would be reasonable enough to say
We can abate the
we can do the rollback, but you're going to have to stay on this for 5 years because that 5 years has to catch itself up.
Right.
And then you're going to have to prove production. Right now, it's going to be really hard to prove production because there's nothing for you to go back on because you haven't owned the property. So it's going to be kind of a forward-looking production.
May I ask for clarification on a couple of things you said?
Yeah.
When you said we can do the rollback, does that mean that you waive the rollback? Or does
No,
that
we
mean-
defer it.
We would
It's
defer it for
deferred.
5 years, and then if you show that you are producing for 5 years, then at the end of the 5 years, we would waive it.
Okay.
Does that make
Well,
sense?
we don't
Or,
waive it. You're just on Greenbelt
I
going
qualify.
qualifying.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
going forward.
right.
So it's
So it's going to be tricky though, because I can see Paul getting ready to speak here on this.
Well, we've never done this before because
we've
we
never-
just passed the urban farming
And it's a
act.
tricky one because rollback usually on the urban farming one is a 1 year.
Right.
Sorry.
And that's where it gets kind of confusing.
Okay, just to give more information so that you have more information to work from. So the urban farming, the only way you can qualify is if the land is classified as irrigated land. His land is not. His is tillable 3. Just to,
But he does have
Give
some water
information.
shares.
if he wants to appeal and get his land classified to a higher classification, which means higher taxes, because it's irrigated as more per acre, he can appeal that and say
Yeah.
that he wants to be irrigated land, but currently
Yeah.
he is on the tillable
You're
3.
absolutely right because it's more of a high use.
Right,
And so
right.
the irrigated is, you're right.
Right,
you're
so right now, he's on a lower
Yeah.
land classification, tillable 3, which is fine for Greenbelt, but for the urban farming, you have to be classified as irrigated land to qualify. So that's another choice that he would have to make if that's the course you wanted to go. But I just wanted to give that information.
So there's some work that you're going to have to do, and if you want to go this route, one, if you want to stay on Greenbelt with the 5 acres, there's going to have to be some sacrifice somewhere in that yard to get to that point where we have 5 acres of actual property. It'll have to go through a process with the commission, not in this meeting, but in the commission meeting, to accept that. So that would still be in the future to do. And then it would have to be deferred for 5 years as you stay on there and prove production, that you're doing this for the next 5 years, before it finally goes back into just the regular Greenbelt status.
Right. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So what I think we'd be willing to do is I'm willing to make a motion to continue this item for as much as, I don't know, Paul, I mean, how long would it take for us to kind of work through the possibilities? Because we've never done this before, 30 days, 60 days, what are you thinking?
To work through the possibilities of,
Whether urban farm, we've never done this where we take a green belt and we look at urban farming and
Yeah.
we look at, he's got to change land status and if this is something he wants to do.
well, go ahead, Bert. Yeah, Bert.
I'm sorry, I was actually going to interrupt with that earlier, but we actually did have a couple of these same situations where
Or if he wants to get rid of some of his yard.
Right, where some folks have been come off Greenbelt, but because they're below the minimum land, but they're actively farming. So we've talked about this in prior meetings, and I believe we had a couple that we were continuing them for discussion until May, while a bill worked its way through the legislature. And I just checked on it right now. It's a bill by Representative Kohler, who's trying to clean up some of these questions that came from the passage of the Urban Farming Act. We're waiting for that bill basically to go through the legislature, hopefully fix some problems. And so I think we
But I
continue
think
to
that bill was dealing with
these-
livestock mostly.
Yeah, but I
Yeah, but that
think-
doesn't mean
but-
we couldn't, I mean, the legislature's in session. If we want to call and say, hey, can we change this so that it's not irrigated, so it includes dry land? I mean, that could be a friendly amendment. We still have 9 days to make that happen. So I would say May.
Well, Representative Kohler's bill is before the House Rev and Tax committee meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. So
It'd have to be quick so they could do that.
Also, one of the
What are you doing
things.
tomorrow at 8 a.m.?
One of the things that he spoke of when we had our meeting
Right.
was one of the other changes they were looking into that they wanted to make for the urban farming is to make it a 7-year rollback and not a 5-year rollback. So that also is good information for people to have before they sign up. I don't want to take people on roller coaster rides.
Right.
yeah.
So we want to make sure that all the information is provided so that they can make an informed decision, because it is a lien on their land.
But for the purpose of this, of this appeal, we already continued a couple of other appeals in the same conversation until May, until
Okay.
this would go
I would
into
agree.
effect.
Let's do that.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to continue this item until the May BOE, and that'll give us time to kind of work through possibilities to see what you want to do. I mean, I would imagine that you probably need to talk to your wife about taking away some of her yard. So I would say, let's continue this item until May.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
For clarification, as I have,
You wanna- I'll second that so that we can have.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
You're
Go
fine.
ahead.
Now you can ask.
One or two items of clarification that would be very helpful is what amount of additional, so how much of the yard and/or, there's a couple of areas that are on the inside of the, that pavement that was talked about that aren't yard, that I could be more
It has-
productive with.
yeah, the
So
ba- yeah.
I just need to know how much.
It's 5.25 acres to get there. Normally, not normally, it's always a quarter acre is for the house and driveway and garage.
Almost a
part
half
of it.
acre.
Okay.
So 5 acres to actual tillable land.
But that paved road around would be,
Part of it. It would count.
And the
That was counted just because of access for the property.
understood. It's also, okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. And it passes 3-0. It's continued until the May 2022 Board of Equalization.
I need to take a quick break. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah, then I will second that.